Margie Preus. How are you this evening?
I'm very good, thank you. And you?
Welcome to the show. I am wonderful. I am thrilled to chat with you. I've been looking forward to it all week. Had it on my calendar. As soon as Sunday night gets here, I'm going to talk with Margie Preus. It's going to be a wonderful time.
Good so far.
Where I always ask our guests to start is I don't summarize other people's biographies and other people's books because I'll make a mess of both. So if you would give the esteemed audience kind of an overview of your background.
Okay. Most of my adult life I spent working in theater, actually, as a writer and a director of a comedy theater, and before that, children's theater. And so I started writing. I published my first novel in 2010. That's not when I started writing it, of course, but that's when I started publishing work for children, books for children, and for young readers. So yeah, I've done a lot of other things in my lifetime before I got a real job. I don't think we want to go there.
Well, what kind of things were you doing? I'm curious.
Well, let's see. I taught swimming and water safety in remote Alaskan villages. I was a model in an art class. I taught dance. I studied dance seriously in my younger years. And I tried breaking horses. Didn't go well.
Well, that sounds.
I just thought I could. I just thought I could. Why not? I knew nothing about it.
I am a master at breaking video game horses. I haven't tried a real one yet.
Oh, is there such a thing? I would like to try that.
Red Dead Redemption 2 or Zelda Breath of the Wild gets you set right up with all the horse breaking you can stand.
Oh, that's a game for me. It wouldn't damage my head so much as the one I tried, the real thing. Anyway.
Yeah, you'd have to hit yourself with the controller before you'd be in
danger. Simulate hitting fence posts.
Although the advances they're making in virtual reality, I have no doubt there'll be a get kicked in the head game sooner or later.
Oh boy. That's what we need.
When did it occur to you that you wanted to write? Obviously, you were writing plays and I think operas for children for a while.
In fact, I just wrote a short libretto for an opera that's going to be done virtually. There's something called the Decameron Opera Coalition, which you can Google and find out. You can buy tickets. We're number one. We're the first opera, and it's a lyric opera of the North. It was really a blast. It's horror, romance, comedy in 12 minutes.
An opera and then a libretto.
Yeah.
When do you know when that'll be lit on the internet on fire?
October 9th is when that one airs, and then they'll continue each successive Friday. There's several. I don't know how many opera companies are involved, but there's a number of opera companies, and there's three short operas each Friday night starting October 9th.
Oh, very fun.
Yeah.
That was the Decameron Opera
Coalition.
And that'll be available October 9th, esteemed audience. So mark it on your calendar and get ready to have your heart swell with uplifting music about horror, comedy, and romance, you said?
Horror, comedy, romance.
Is it too late to get some horse breaking in there, or is that ship sailed already?
That's gone. We're done with that.
So when did it come to you that you wanted to write books for children?
Probably when I had kids. I already had a love of children's literature from taking my favorite course as an undergraduate was children's literature, and then as I mentioned before, I worked in children's theater, and I wrote pieces. We toured around all over northern Minnesota and later Wisconsin, and went to schools and performed these little shows. A lot of them were based on children's books. I'm not going to say what the books were because I don't want anyone coming after me for copyright purposes. But
they were all
all educational.
No need to worry.
Yeah, it was a long time ago too. So I was familiar with what was, well, I had a love of children's literature, and then I had kids, and we read to them, all the time, and that love was kind of reborn and made me want to try my hand at it, writing something myself for kids. Of course, by the time I got published, my kids weren't kids anymore, but there's still a lot of kids in the world that are readers, so plenty of kids to read my stuff.
You seem to be finding them. I think I think you'll be all right. So 2010, that's when you debut. When did you start writing for specifically books?
When did I start writing?
Because I assume you must have had some kind of writing routine down just from all the scripts and things for.
Right. Yeah. I was always writing. I actually went to graduate school at the Writers Workshop in Iowa, and then transferred to to Binghamton University in New York, where John Gardner was teaching, and took his workshop. And so I got my MA in writing. And so I was probably I don't know what I was thinking I was going to do, write novels. I don't know. And then that I was there when he was killed in a motorcycle accident. And so everything just kind of fell apart for me. I just quit. I left school. I did get my MA eventually, but I left school, and I just kind of, I quit writing. I went back to theater, and for a very long time. But during that time, I wrote some stories that were published in, magazines and journals, and and so I was always writing.
John Gardner, that's a name that I'm sure most of the esteemed audience, since we're talking primarily to a lot of writers out there, are going to be poking their heads up like, ooh, I've read him. So what was the experience of being taught by John Gardner? What did you have something that you took away from him?
He was a really great teacher. And it was a long enough time ago that I don't know if I can remember very much that would be useful. But one thing I really loved about him is he would say something very emphatically, like, you should never do this or that. Just never do it. Of course, there are exceptions. And then he would then contradict himself in the next sentence. And he would say, I know I'm contradicting myself. But he was, the one thing that I remember, especially from him, and I have it on a sticky note stuck up near my desk, is I went to see him in his office one time, and he said, I hope you're not going to any of your other classes. Because I was taking a full load of graduate courses, Shakespeare and Victorian writers and, what all. And I have that. I kept that, and I realized once I started writing novels exactly what he was talking about. You write a novel, you can't go to any of your other classes. You have to just do that one thing. And so what that little sticky note tells me is, this is what you're, when I'm working on a novel, this is what you're doing. So you have to, there's a lot of things you have to just set aside. Whatever you can set aside.
Yeah, good luck with children.
You can't set aside children, but you can set aside housework and cleaning your attic, and a lot of other things that can wait.
Oh, frequently I find that when I'm sitting down to write, if it's a bad day, it's not coming that day, or I'm distracted, then the dishes were never more crucial. They must be done. My God, what am I waiting for?
Well, it's always easier to do the dishes.
So when in your writing, since you're trying to limit as many other activities as you can do? Are you still reading for pleasure, or do you read when you're not writing?
I try to read as much as I can. It is, that is a really tricky thing because I feel like you need to read. I need to read, and I want to read, but when you're writing, and especially I think with a novel, there's so many words to be written and it's time consuming. It is hard to squeeze in reading. Of course, I'm always reading for research, no matter what I'm writing. So there's that. But I always read before bed, or in bed before I go to sleep.
So what, well, I want to talk about your writing house because I'm fascinated about your writing house. But what does your average writing day look like? And maybe also tell us about the writing house.
I've always been really jealous when I hear writers say, well, I get up and I have coffee and then I write from 8 to 11 and then I go in and have a quiche and then I, smoke my pipe and then I do my correspondence and, like their day is just so neat and tidy. And I find that my day is just always a mess of crises. And I don't know why. There's always, don't other people have crises to deal with? You must if you have children.
Oh, sure. What
Yeah.
What kind of crises are we talking about?
I don't know, just something breaks or there's, you spill birdseed down the basement stairs. There's just always something you have to deal with. I don't know, mice. Yeah, I don't know. So, dog, the dog has to go to the vet and there's car breaks. My speaker has gone out in my computer, all those sorts of things that you have to deal with. I don't have much of a schedule. I guess that's what I'm getting around to saying. So
there's not a firm clock in time. Here I am at the writing house.
No, if I have nothing else going on, I just go out there and I work. I especially like to be there in the morning because the sun comes in the morning and it's lovely and warm. This is northern Minnesota, so that's a plus. A lot depends on where I am in the writing process too, or what I'm doing. Like I know that you were interested in talking about the business and the writing part of writing. There's like creative writing, and then there's business, or going through copy edits, or making sort of those kinds of decisions. And there's a lot of time spent on both promotion and back in the day when we used to go to schools, a lot of school visits and appearances and things like that you're kind of always juggling, and emails and communicating with people about. So that takes a certain amount of time. It takes a lot of time, actually. So I'm kind of jealous of my writing time. I do try to squeeze it in whenever I can.
And is your family at this point respectful of your writing time? You're out in the writing house. It's time to leave mom alone until it's done? Or?
Yeah, the writing house is really good for that. There's way, way less interruption. My kids are grown now, but thanks to the pandemic, they were home for 5 months. And so, but they are all creative people working too. So it was kind of interesting. The house was just full of this creative energy of people doing their various creative endeavors all over the place. And thankfully, I had my little writing house so I could go out there, because otherwise, it's pretty much constant interruption. Because you're still mom, no matter how old, or dad, no matter how old your kids get. I found that to be true during the pandemic.
So, Do you insist that you write every day, or if there's a day where there's multiple crises, you've got school things lined up back in the before time, you've got other things you've got to do on the business side. Are you comfortable with, hey, today is just not a writing day, but it's still an author day because I'm doing authorish stuff? Or
Yeah, I do. I would like to be able to write every day, but I can't sometimes. And then I just have to sort of give my permission, rather than just feeling frantic or guilty all day that I didn't get any writing done. I just have to say, I got to do this other stuff. So, yeah, no, I'm not. I think there are a lot of writers I know who really make a point of always writing every single day, and I'm not one of them.
well, it's working out for you. We're gonna get there. You've got 3 books just this year, so it's
Yeah.
it's going fine. But before we do, we got to talk about this writing house.
Yeah.
For folks that are interested, they can go to your website, which is
My name,
margipreus.com.
yeah, MargiPreus.
So they can go there, and you've got a lovely tour that you filmed. So we can all marvel in jealousy at your beautiful writing house. And I think it started off as a writing closet originally. Is that right?
Oh, well, yeah. When my kids were little, we lived in a little house, and my office was in a closet, a literal closet. And I would shut the door and say, okay, Mom is in her writing office. Don't interrupt unless it's an emergency. And then, 5 minutes later, bang, 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 bang. It's an emergency. I can't find my socks. So all the time they were little, I would say, I wish I had my own little house to go to. And then they grew up. And when they were teenagers, we moved into a big house. So now we have a big house. And then one of my youngest kids came home when I was in Japan, actually. And I was doing school visits there right after Part of a Samurai, I think, came out. And he built that while I was in Japan, or he started it anyway. And it was finished when I got back.
Did you know it was going to be there, or was it a total surprise?
No, it was a surprise. Yeah, it was a wonderful surprise. But it was also kind of ironic because now I have a big house and there's nobody in it, and I have all kinds of rooms. But I would say I still recommend, if you can swing it and you have room and you can find a place and the money to build one, a little house is the best thing ever. Because when I'm out there, I don't think about those dirty dishes in the sink or the closet that needs to be cleaned, or not that I've ever cleaned a closet really, but sorry. It's just a good thing I have a big house, so I can just keep putting things in other rooms. It's a wonderful way to really go to work and be at work and not be always aware of your household tasks.
Well, I can't imagine that there's a fan of yours out there that would be comfortable with 1 or 2 less books, but you having more cleaner closets.
Yeah. You really have to decide. You have to make some priorities, and sometimes I would like to have a very tidy house, but someone else would have to do it.
Fair enough. And so 2010s when the first book comes out, was that The Legend of the Lady Slipper, or have I got the order wrong?
Yeah, I think that was the first one. Here it is. Now that all the books are going to fall over now. That one. And so, yeah, it's kind of a funny story because this is originally Lisa and I were going to write a big fat book about trees. Not a nonfiction book about trees, but a collection of tales, fairy tales and folk tales about how different trees came to be, or why they are the way they are. or why the leaves change color, or why the birch has black stripes and things like that. And then we would have information about the trees as well. So we were compiling what would have been this tome, and we wrote on the letter to the editor, we just scrawled on the bottom that we had just found a beautiful little, it was just the tiniest little paragraph of a tale about the lady slipper in one of the books we'd been looking at, and that we thought it would be fun once we were done with the big tree book that we would do one about wildflowers. But our editor really just only wanted that one about the lady slipper, and so that became this book.
So what's the path that gets you to that debut novel? Did you have an agent at that point?
I did have an agent, but she didn't sell Heart of a Samurai. What happened was I was at an SCBWI conference in Minneapolis, and I was listening to an agent talk. His name is Stephen Fraser, and I just loved what he had to say. And I had an affinity. I had a warm feeling about, like friendly, like he seemed like he would be nice. And so I raised my hand and I said, what happens if you already have an agent, but maybe you want a different one? And he said, oh, that happens all the time. Don't worry about that. It's business, it's business. And so I sent him the first page of Heart of a Samurai and a postcard that's on the back said, I would like to read more, and a little checkbox. No thanks, and a little checkbox. This is back when we used to send things in the mail. Remember that?
Unfortunately, all too well. And all the little self-addressed stamped envelopes that came back as well.
Yeah. So anyway, he sent the postcard back with the check. I would like to read more, and so then he became my agent, and he sold Heart of a Samurai. It didn't take him very long. So that's how that happened. Kind of, okay, a little interesting side story. I think it's interesting. An agent or an editor at FSG had expressed interest in the book, but she didn't want anything that wasn't actually true, that didn't actually happen. And so I had to take out all the bullies because I made those up. Because I couldn't find anything historically that said that this or that person had been a bully or, had treated my character in Heart of a Samurai badly. And so I took all that out and sent it back, and she said, well, it just doesn't have enough conflict. And so
pound your head straight through the desk.
Anyway, that didn't really go anywhere. So when Steve sent it to my editor, the editor who took it at Abrams, Amulet Books at Abrams, he said, what this story needs are some bullies. And so I stuck them back in like that. I just put those chapters back in and sent it off. And afterwards, I realized, he's going to think I write really, really fast. Like, I finally had to confess to him, I already had those parts done. All I had to do was, kind of put them back in and rearrange or massage everything, as my husband would say. He builds things and he says, we'll just massage this. I was like, it just doesn't seem to fit with building things. But anyway, so I had to kind of piece that back together and send it out. And then he took it.
Stephen Fraser immediately recognized the brilliance of the work and said, this will definitely go on to be a Newbery Honor. Let's do this.
I don't know. I don't think any of us saw that coming. I didn't, that's for sure.
Well, did you have? I'm assuming you had some sort of feelings toward the book. That obviously you were proud of it. You must have thought that it was destined for some kind of greatness, or do you
Oh
go
my
the
gosh,
opposite way?
no. No. I did not think anyone was going to read it. That was the first thing. I seriously, I thought nobody's going to read this book. You know, this it's just oddball kid. I don't know. I just didn't. And I actually hoped that no Japanese person would ever read it because I was petrified that it would be, wrong somehow. And
Obviously, you got over that before you went to Japan and were
yeah,
doing school visits, I assume.
that was while I was writing it. But then I have a very good friend who's Japanese who lived across the street with me. And she read everything. She gave me lots of good advice. And then before it was published, I went to Japan. I went to where he was born. I talked to a lot of people. And so, by the time it was published, it had been pretty well vetted, and I felt pretty solid, like it was solid. And but I didn't think it was gonna. No, in fact, I didn't even start writing another book because I just thought, nobody's gonna read it, and I'm not gonna ever get another contract. So back to theater. I don't know what I thought I was gonna do, but yeah, no. And the other thing is, I totally did not see the Newbery Honor coming at all. That was also back in the day before all the Newbery mock Newberries and social media and all the blogging and the chit chat about who's going to win. It just didn't happen. Or if it did, I was completely oblivious to it. So
Well, that sounds like a better world.
it actually, yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think it's hard. It's hard to have the buzz, and that kind of heightens an anxiety. I don't know, just makes one a little more aware of that. I mean, the obliviousness was lovely. I'll just say that.
So you who are about to go on to greatness, but are thinking that you're going to go back and maybe just do theater and forget about writing for a while, when let us live vicariously through you, because this is something that I enjoy, and I like to provide this for esteemed audience. So we all want to know, what is that feeling? Take us through getting to the point of being a Newbery Honor, and what is that experience?
Well, I would say, it is amazing. To have that affirmation, especially because I was convinced that it was just kind of I had written it, but it was nothing special, and lots of other much better books out there. And to have the affirmation that I had written something good was. It really did change the way I looked at myself as a writer. I could take myself seriously, and I could say, well, I guess maybe I do know what I'm doing, sort of, some of the time. It still doesn't feel that way, though, when I'm writing, I'll tell you. And of course, it was a great boon in terms of publishing. So, my publisher offered me another contract without me having written anything.
Well, sure, they'd be fools not to.
But I found it sort of simultaneously thrilling and mortifying. I mean, I was just petrified that I wouldn't be able to do it, But actually, the next book that I wrote was Shadow on the Mountain, and that it was a joy. It was a joy, and I think largely because I was working. So Manjiro is a real person. He's the hero of Heart of a Samurai, and so my editor kind of pushed me to, not pushed, but suggested that I try writing another book based on the life of a real person with a lot of adventure and, excitement in it and action, and maybe have another boy protagonist. And so I I thought about what I'd want to write, and I had long been interested in the resistance in Norway, which hasn't gotten a lot of, there aren't like tons of books written about that, especially not for kids. So it seemed like an opportunity. And I, by luck, got introduced to a man who had been involved in the resistance when he was just a teenager. And so I met him. I went to Norway and I met him and interviewed him. And he was just, he has passed away since, which is one of the reasons why I feel like writing real stories about real people who are involved in World War II and the resistance, like my newest book, Village of Scoundrels, based on real people. You got to get those stories while you can, because they are elderly people now, and we're losing them, and we're losing their stories as well. So anyway, that novel was just a joy to work on, but largely I think because of being able to write the story of this really amazing human being that I could talk to, and just to get to know him was really wonderful.
So for all those out there who might one day hopefully breathe this rarefied air, oh my God, I'm a Newbery Honor, and now you've got to write the second book. Because that had to be daunting, to be thinking how you're going to live up to that. How did you get past that and get the book produced?
I actually, one of the working titles of that book was Get a Grip. I'm just like, it was really interesting challenge for me, because Heart of a Samurai, I worked on that for years. I mean, many years. And so, because nobody was waiting for it. I didn't have a deadline. I would put it away. I was teaching, I was directing a theater company, I had kids at home. So it's not like I worked on it every day. But over time, I worked on it for years. And then Shadow on the Mountain, I had a year. That was my deadline. And so it was, really, that I think, though, that it was good for me as a writer, because that made me get into the habit of art, as Flannery O'Connor calls it, where you could just sit down and you bring your inspiration to it. You don't wait for your inspiration to come to you. You're there, you're ready, you write. And it also it just became my life to write this book, and then each successive one as well. And that's how that's how my life became the writer life. But it was very frightening, yes, because but I guess I work under pressure, and I think theater has helped me learn to be able to do that, to produce something in a short amount of time and just have faith that it's going to happen and it's going to come together eventually.
Well, writing theater for children and then watching them watch the thing you wrote, that had to give you some kind of insight on what type of storytelling works for them and what doesn't.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I was usually not in theater. I was directing most of my life, so I spent a lot of time watching the audience and gauging their reactions to things. And I do think about that when I'm writing. I think about, what does the audience see when the curtain raises, basically? When they open the page and they start reading, what is the scene? And I also really believe in having active characters, both on stage and on the page. Hardly anybody, except in this digital age, do you sit in one place and talk to somebody like we're doing now. In most situations, you're doing something at the same time you're talking to someone. You're, peeling carrots or shoveling the sidewalk or, cleaning the house, cleaning that closet that you've never cleaned and shouting over your shoulder. But and that comes from theater, is just having a real awareness of what are your characters doing, how are your characters getting on stage, how are they getting off stage, you know, where are they, what are and how are they engaging with each other. All of that is just the same in a novel as it is on stage, really. And the other, well, another real helpful thing about the way I did theater is that I wasn't doing plays so much, although I did some of those, as it was like sketch comedy for kids and sketch comedy for grown-ups, two different theater companies, but same principle, which was an ensemble of actors who improvised or wrote scripts and then improvised on the script, and the script got changed over the course of the rehearsal period, and that really helped me with getting used to being edited. Because
were you comfortable with that, or were you in the back with your arms folded? That's not what I wrote.
No, I was so used to it, because in theater I would write a script and bring it to the ensemble, and they'd improvise on it and change the lines, and people would draw, you know, write on it, and it would undergo so much change that it would hardly be anything like what I wrote to begin with, but it would be much better and funnier. And so I
still your name on it, right? So
and, yeah. Well, we back in those days we were all just, you know, a company kind of writing together. But yeah, so I learned from that other people can help you, and they're probably going to help you improve what you've done. And you just sort of let go of that ego thing of, well, no, I wrote that, and so it's precious. And so no, editing has never been hard for me. I mean, I don't always accept everything that an editor says, but I choose my battles, and I don't fight everything at all. Mostly they're right, I think. And sometimes it's just like, of course, you know, and that's why we have editors.
It is a very, very healthy outlook that I bet makes that collaboration a lot easier.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I want my editors, I want rigorous editing. I want an editor to really look at things closely, and really, I want them to help me. I rely on it.
We are absolutely going to talk about the Silver Box, the third volume in the Enchantment Lake Mysteries, available October 6th. I realize that at this point in the conversation, any publicists who might be listening, any agents who might be listening, start to get a little bit nervous that we're not going to talk about it. We're absolutely going to talk about it, but I want to ask just a little bit more about historical fiction before we do. Because something you said, I'm fascinated by this. When I talk to people who are braver than me with more attention to detail to write historical fiction, I prefer just fiction. It's all made up. You can't say it didn't happen. Who knows? But when you're telling a story and you get to a minute point, like we can't have bullies in here because we don't have the documentation that these bullies were really in the story originally. How much leeway do you give yourself? You're talking to people in person, you're learning their stories, you want to make sure that you're true to them, but you're also creating your art. So where's your comfort level with how much the story needs to serve your art and how much it needs to preserve history and be accurate?
Well, I do have rules about yeah, and I get very upset when I read a book by someone else who historical fiction based on real people, and they don't follow my rules, because I feel everyone should.
Well, they will now.
They better.
We're going to tell them.
All right, here are my rules. I really do try to follow that life as closely as I possibly can. And the way I do start, and this is, you asked earlier, how did I get through my second novel after Heart of a Samurai, which was Shadow on the Mountain? What I did was I wrote down the scenes that really happened with my character and this real person, and these are going to be my major scenes. You know, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, and I kind of wrote those scenes first, and then figured out how to make them stick together. And so all of the major scenes, well, that might not be entirely true, but the really pivotal scenes are things that really happen. And so I try to look at the life as it really was, and I won't have anything happen to the character, you know, anything major happen to the character if it didn't really happen. I'm not going to kill them off in a way that, you know, that if they died somehow, I'm not going to kill them off in a way that they didn't die. You know, that just seems wrong, totally wrong to me. And I have read books, in fact, very well-regarded books where that's happened. And
not well regarded by you, it sounds like.
Not by me, but, you know, even Oprah. So I won't say titles because actually I can't even remember. But what else? I just don't. I won't have really major. I just won't have major things happen to the character if it didn't happen. I feel I try to, when I need to add scenes like the bullies, for instance. Like, here's this kid. He's from Japan. He's in a whaling town. The whaling community was very unhappy with Japan because Japan was isolated at that time and would not allow any whalers, any foreigners at all near their country, in the waters around their country. So the whaling community did not have high regard for Japan. And now here's this Japanese kid in their midst. I didn't think that everybody would be nice to him. Plus, he looked funny, he talked funny, he had funny habits. You know, he was really different. And he had to go to school with the little kids. And he was, 14 years old, and he had to start elementary school with the little kids because he didn't know how to read and write English. So I figured he was going to be teased, and there were going to be people who didn't like him just because of where he had come from. So I didn't feel that I was doing anything, much of a stretch there to have bullies in his life. So if something like that's going to happen to a character, I just want it to be highly possible that something like that could have happened.
That makes absolute sense to me. When I had Avi on here, and I never get tired of bragging about it, check the back catalog, esteemed audience. It's a great episode. But he said that he will start a scene. He'll look up what the weather was on the date that he is writing the scene, so he makes sure that sets the tone. Do you do that, or is that?
Oh yeah, I have looked for moon. Like what was a moon, sunset, sunrise, what holidays were going on. I do kind of an immersive experience when I'm writing about another culture. So I watch a lot of movies. I read novels that were either written during that time period or set in that time period. And I, when I was writing about Japan and the two books that I wrote about that, I drink green tea. I listen to music. I read lots and lots of folk tales, which is something I always do in any culture I'm writing about, is read their fairy tales and their folk tales. I feel like you learn a lot about the culture that way. And I watched so many World War II era movies when I was writing Shadow on the Mountain that my kids made me watch Dead Snow. Do you know that one? You should know it. Zombies.
There's sure. That's the Nazi zombies, right? Yeah.
Nazi zombies. They said, okay, we refuse to watch any more of these World War II movies unless you'll watch this one. It is
So
pretty
then
funny.
zombies, of course, made their way into your book because you had the.
Almost. I leave that to the professionals. Yeah, in other words, you can write the zombie books.
I've seen, I don't remember if this was in an interview that you did or a standalone video, but you were talking about, you were in your writing house and you had your computer up, so it must have been the tour. And you were talking about how you would do research on the computer while you're writing, because you write handwritten first drafts, right?
I do, yeah, mostly. It kind of goes back and forth, but I mostly compose on paper with a pen. And I tried one time to not do that because I thought I could save a lot of time if I would just, type on the keyboard. And so I tried it, and it just was a complete failure, and I had to go back and start over on paper. And so I felt, for a long time, I felt kind of bad about how much time I was wasting. But then apparently studies show that more parts of your brain fire if you are writing longhand on paper. And, apparently I need all the parts of my brain that I can get in order to write something. I don't know what it is. I just think there's maybe a more fluid connection between your brain and runs down into the pen somehow. Or maybe it's because I grew up writing that way. And so that those paths in my brain are more open, more well-traveled. I don't know why, but it's just what I do.
If it's working, don't mess with it. My God.
I have told people, like if things aren't going well, why don't you try it? Because lots and lots of people compose on the computer. And I'm not saying it's bad, but but sometimes if people feel like they're really not getting anywhere or they're having trouble, I said, just try writing on paper, see what happens.
And I think I'm 90% certain I've read so much writing advice, but I think I'm about to quote John Gardner and the importance of not interrupting the fictive dream. I think that's him.
Yeah.
But if you're researching while do you just write in, look up later, or do you actually do the research and then go back to drafting?
Oh, well, that depends. I mean, if I'm really writing and things are going, then I'll, just make a note. Or I just I'll know that I need to go back there and look up something. But if I get to a spot where I'm kind of stalled, then I'll definitely stop and do the research.
Okay. I was just wondering how you were able to do that and then not also, check your email, check your Facebook, go down 50 rabbit holes.
Yeah, I actually have not been very good about that lately. I get really stuck on news.
The world's a bit distracting this year.
Yeah. This year has been the worst for that. Yeah.
I saw that you on Twitter that you recently met Joe Biden and you've already voted early. Thank you. And this is a wonderful opportunity for me to remind esteemed audience, without getting into the quagmire of politics that is this never-ending year, vote early. Get your absentee ballot. Have a plan. I'm not talking to convert anybody. I'm talking to you who maybe is thinking about not voting, because what's the point? There's a point. For the love of God, plan to vote. So you go and you vote early and you meet Joe Biden. What's that experience like now that everybody's in a mask? You can't get. Did you just shake hands?
No. We bumped elbows, though.
Good enough. I take that.
Yeah. It was a surprise because my husband and I had been asked if we would vote early, and if we were going to do that or willing to do that, and we said yeah, we would. And I don't know about every other state, but here we can just go down to City Hall and go and vote. I mean, in person, just go in and cast your vote. I mean, it's kind of an absentee ballot thing, but you you don't put it in the mail, you put it in a ballot box. It was very easy, and they had arranged everything to be very safe, so I didn't feel worried in any way. And and then we were going to go talk to the mayor, and I thought it was a little like local media promotion for vote early, and voting is open now. But we met the mayor, and then Governor Walz, governor of Minnesota, showed up, and we're sitting out in a little cafe table outdoors of a little coffee shop down in a kind of a touristy area of Duluth that's right down by the lake. We're on Lake Superior. And we had chatted, and I started wondering, this is the governor. Doesn't he have anything better to do than talk to my husband and me? And then there were a couple of UMD, University of Minnesota Duluth students there too. Anyway, if somebody came and said, okay, we're going to go take pictures now, and kind of moved us to a little different area, and all of a sudden the motorcade drove up, and Joe Biden got out and came over and greeted us. We all sat down at the table again and chatted with Joe. He's a very nice guy. And he talked a little bit about, his plans for the future, and I feel that he's, has good ideas for moving us in the right direction. He spent some time chatting with little kids, and you could just see how much he loved to talk with the kids, and the kids loved to talk to him too. He's very down to earth, kind of a humble guy, and speaks in complete sentences.
Oh my God! What a pleasant change of pace that might be.
It was lovely. It was quite lovely. Yeah.
I noticed that you tweet about politics. You're very open about your politics, who you're voting for, all that good stuff. Do you ever worry about that impacting your author brand, or do you care?
Not now, no. I mean, the stakes are so high, and now is not a time to be silent, and not a time to be quiet. I mean, the country is, well, first of all, the climate. I worry that we can't have another 4 years of the current administration and have much hope for our planet. It's just too dire. We need to get on top of that right now. And our democracy has really taken a hit. I feel we really have to get that back on track as fast as we can too, or lose what we've worked hard to gain and over the years. I just don't think that now is a time to be quiet. We just all have to make a noise, and we all have to vote, and we all have to stand up for what's right.
I agree, and I couldn't have said it better myself. So, okay, 2020, absolute dumpster fire. We're in agreement on that. But in the middle of that dumpster fire, here's you with 3 new books. So what is that experience, releasing 3 books in the worst year of whatever?
Yeah, it's very funny how it all happened. Last 2019 on my birthday, I asked my sister-in-law, who's an astrologist, whichever.
I will accept either. I don't know.
To do my chart. So she did. I've never had it done before. And she, said, "Oh, you're going to have you're going to have creative time, and you're going to be on the top of your game." And it all seemed very, very rosy. But then she said, "Now tell me the dates of when your books are supposed to be published." And I said, "End of February and end of March." And she said, "Oh, no. You have to change that. You have to call your publisher and make them change the dates." And I kind of pressed her, like I'm like, wow, they put it in the catalog, and they've got a whole, plan, and I don't think I can really ask at this point to change all that. And she goes, no, you really have to. And so I tried to press her, why, why are those bad dates? And she just said, I'd rather not say. And so I didn't do anything about it, So sure
Does
enough,
that fill you with dread at that point, or are you a bit
I'm
more of a
going to pay
skeptic?
much more attention to her in the future. What?
I'm just asking,
Yeah.
does that fill you with dread at that point, or are you a bit more of a skeptic having fun with your chart being done for the first time?
I'm a skeptic. Yeah, I guess I'm a skeptic. But not so much a skeptic that I wouldn't, do it. And I think most of those things are sort of like the I Ching, or tarot cards, or things like that, that you can kind of make of it what you will, and I think sometimes it's sort of like guidance more than this is going to happen to you. That's kind of the way I feel about those things. But yeah, so anyway, I didn't change the date. And so those books came out, and nobody's paying any attention. It was kind of a rough time, but we'll see how they do in the long run. I hope they'll find their right audience and their right readers and people who will appreciate them.
Well, this is good stuff. We mentioned Village of Scoundrels, and I am absolutely tickled by The Littlest Voyager. If you want to tell a esteemed audience a little bit about that one.
Yeah. So there it is. This came out the end of March, and it's about a red squirrel who stows away on a Voyager canoe. And those of you who don't know Voyageurs, these were hardy folk from that traveled the waterways from Montreal to Grand Portage, Minnesota, and beyond. But my story is from Montreal to Grand Portage. And so they traveled on waterways and on the Great Lakes in the big birch bark canoes back in the kind of 1700s to the through mid 1800s maybe. And they traded for furs. So, which is shocking for this little guy to find out. He goes all the way, 2,000 miles, to get to find out that what they're trading for are the furs of his brethren. So you'll have to read the book to find out what transpired.
That's a hard day for a squirrel.
It was a bad day. It was a bad day for the squirrel. But it's a lot of fun, and yeah, just it's a lurk.
Do your rules of historical fiction still apply when the protagonist is a squirrel?
No. You can write about anything. This one, Village of Scoundrels, we talked about, it is also based on the true story of a village in France that sheltered many hundreds, possibly thousands of Jewish children and teens rescued from French concentration camps. And it's really about the teenagers in that village who were part of the rescue effort. So there's several protagonists in this one, but they're all based on real people. And I was able to interview some of them, which was quite an amazing experience. And Hannah, who was one of the people that were sheltered in that village, also attended seventh grade class when I was in New York City, right when the book came out, right before the pandemic. Right before the pandemic, and I was going to schools in New York City. I'm fine.
Thank goodness.
Anyway, she was amazing talking about her experiences. So that was a real highlight too of this whole experience.
Something I had read that you said, and I promise everyone who's listening, we are going to talk the silver box. We absolutely are. October 6th, esteemed audience. It's either available now or you should be pre-ordering. But you had said that, I don't know if it's maybe a thematic concern for your work, is that you're fascinated why some triumph over adversity while others are crushed by it. So have you at this point formed a hypothesis for why that might be so?
No, that's why I keep writing.
No, you were supposed to give me the answer.
It's no, really, it is a reason to write, is to try to get into that spirit, to find that spirit. Where does it come from? Why do some people have it and others don't? And there doesn't seem to be any logical reason, really, that for that. I mean, with Heart of a Samurai, Manjiro and 4 fishing companions, and the 4 others, they did not have good lives. The experience pretty much crushed all 4 of them. But Manjiro, the 5th, had a stunning life, and it wasn't by happenstance. It was him. He made that happen. So why? I don't know. But I mean, I think I tried to show that his curiosity and his openness to people, to new experiences, to being willing to try to understand other people, and try to bring people together, as he did when he got back to Japan, to try to show that we are all alike, really, under the skin. So, all of those things worked in his favor.
Fair enough. Well, when you figure it out, come back and tell me, and then it will be much calmer. Maybe it's just a matter of we've got to get the astrological charts. We've got to up our game. Maybe get a new app design that will make them more precise, and then you'll know just at age 18. Okay, how long am I going to live?
And when should I have those books come out?
They look at the chart and ooh, better write fast.
Yeah.
Okay. As promised, my God, let's talk about the silver box that is available October 6th. And you've got a launch party that will be happening on the 6th. So this is going to air October 3rd. So everybody that's listening to it as the show comes out, God bless you, esteemed audience. I love you. If you're finding this after, I love you too. I'm glad you're here. But where can people go to attend the launch party for the silver box?
Well, there's a link there'll be a link on my website and on Zenith Bookstore, which is sponsoring the launch. So it's you can find Zenith Bookstore in Duluth. Will also have it. You can find the link on my Facebook page, and I'll put it everywhere I can figure out how to put it onto.
Well, I'll drop it in the show notes as well, esteemed audience, so check there and it'll be there for you.
Yeah, it's a crowdcast event. It's free, and anybody can attend. But you do have to register for it. And the really cool thing that's recently found out is that the illustrator, the guy who comes up with these fabulous covers, that's the silver box. There's 2 other books in the series.
All with very beautiful covers.
Yeah, and the covers are great. Now all my books are going to fall over now. There they go. Okay. So this is the first one, Enchantment Lake. I just want you to be able to see the cover, or should I describe them for the listening audience? They're really
the listening audience has access to the Google. These covers are worth seeking out, esteemed audience. The Clue in the Trees, Enchantment Lake, and the Silver Box. Head to MargiePreus.com, and you can view them there, I'm sure.
Yes. So he's going to be part of the launch and talk about anything anybody wants to ask him about. But I love that the clues are in the book, and I tell people if you should be able to figure out the mystery just by looking at the pictures on the cover. But probably not really. So we'll do that, and I'll probably talk a little bit about the other books, and maybe I will, wear a Voyageur cap on and have puppets and birch bark canoes or a beret when I talk about Village of Scoundrels. And what else? Oh, yeah, and then we get around to the silver box, the mystery.
Do you wear those hats when you write these stories, or is this just for afterward when you're talking about them?
No, I just do that to wake people up.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I don't know. We always have some fun. I usually either have a quiz, or sometimes I've had treasure hunts, and I'm thinking about that. For this one, I haven't quite figured out how to do that virtually, but I'm working on it. So we'll do something like that, and it won't just be me talking head.
Well, I think that would be highly entertaining if that's all it was. But to find out there's more, even better. As true to my word, I won't describe your biography, and I won't describe your book. I'd mangle it. So if you would, please tell esteemed audience about the Enchantment Lake series.
Okay, yeah. Well, Enchantment Lake is a fictional, sort of not so fictional lake in northern Minnesota where these mysteries take place. And so my character, who's 17, her name is Francie Fry, and she's kind of a Northwoods Nancy Drew. She first comes back to her great aunt's lake cabin when she thinks they're in danger because people along the lakeshore are getting murdered. And so the stories are very regionally based, although you don't have to know anything about Minnesota to enjoy them. But people who do live here recognize the scenes of swimming, boating, berry picking, lost kayaks, eerie noises in the bogs, poisoned hot dishes. Hot dishes are casseroles, and for those of you who don't know, that's what we call them here. And murder, so sort of typical northern Minnesota lake life. Mosquitoes, all that stuff. But there's always a murder.
Sure.
Oh, wait, well, not always. And so each book has a mystery that's solved within the pages of this book. But there's also an overarching mystery in all three of Francie's family. Her mother disappeared when she was very young. She doesn't remember anything about it, but she's been told since she was little that her mother died, but she suspects that's not true. And as we go along in this series, it becomes more and more likely that her mother is still alive. So by the end, in the silver box, Francie is pretty convinced that this box is going to reveal to her where her mother is. Will the silver box reveal where her mother is? You have to read the book to find out. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you.
Wouldn't that be something? Go to all the trouble of writing 2 books and then just spill it on the Middle Grade Ninja podcast?
Yeah. So each one is, I should also mention that each one is a different season at the lake. So the first one's in the summer. And Clue in the Trees is in the fall. And the Silver Box is in the winter. And originally I thought that I was going to have a fourth book and it was going to take place in the spring. But it actually, northern Minnesota doesn't have a spring. Really, I'm serious. It kind of goes winter, 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 summer. So this one is mostly in the winter, and there's a little coda at the end. So we get the little tiny bit of spring, which is very well suited for our climate at the very end.
And are you content now that you have finished, you've satisfied the story, you're good to walk away to do something else, or is there maybe still a possibility for fourth, fifth, and sixth book?
Oh.
I heard 10 more books is what you're going to write.
Oh, okay. Well, Francie's going to age out. She's graduating. She graduates at the end of this book, the last book, so from high school. So then she gets to be a college girl, and I don't know, that seems a bit of a stretch for my audience, which I think is really more middle grade. Even though she's 17, I think the sweet spot with the readers is like 10, 11. It's like Nancy Drew, which I read I think when I was about 10 or so. It was exciting to read about Nancy Drew driving in her roadster. She had a boyfriend, and it felt kind of like being a little voyeuristic in the high school world.
Well, I read some Nancy Drew when I was younger. Then I would immediately return to the Hardy Boys, naturally. Did you always have it in your head that, hey, at some point on a long enough timeline, I'm going to do my Nancy Drew?
I have always loved mysteries. I did like Nancy Drew, and I was also a big fan of Encyclopedia Brown. And those little tiny mysteries that you could solve yourself. I love those. And then I also, when I was a kid, my dad used to let me stay up past my bedtime and watch Perry Mason with him. So those were kind of crime stories, but they were kind of mysteries too. And as a grown-up, I love watching mystery on PBS, and I love reading mysteries too. So I think, as Eudora Welty said, writing comes from a superior devotion to reading, and that's probably why I wanted to try writing mysteries. It's the same reason I wanted to write for young readers, is that I loved reading those books, and I wanted to try it myself, try writing. And same thing with mysteries. I love mysteries, and I wanted to try writing. I do have very much newfound respect for mystery writers now, though, because, I think they must figure out what's going to happen before they start writing, and I never do.
Did you pants these 3 books? Surely You must have known some of them.
The only one I knew the ending of, sort of, was the last one. This one, Silver Box. Otherwise, I had no idea. I mean, like, I would have a murder happen, and I had no idea who did it.
When did you figure it out?
I don't know. That's that faith thing. Like, you just have to have faith that it's going to come around. You're going to figure it out. That's that's how I did it. But it was sort of kind of touch and go sometimes. Like, with the Clue in the Trees, I was really like, I have no idea. But then I read this really interesting news article, which I can't really divulge because I give away too much of the book, and I don't want to spoil it. But that was like, that's it. That's it. That's what's going to happen. And it's based on a real thing. So I kind of like that about it. The mystery is that it's actually based on a kind of, partly anyway, a real event.
And these are relatively realistic mysteries. I mean, obviously, Francie is a former television detective, and so there's some not quite fantastical elements, but heightened reality maybe is maybe the word for that.
Right.
But this has to be a bit of a departure because you don't have history to guide you and to say this absolutely has to happen. So how does that change your process?
Yeah, it is interesting. Writing about a real person has parameters to follow, and when you're writing a real life, and you have rules like I do, you can't go outside those parameters. It has to be close to that for me. And so when you write straight fiction, like anything could happen. It's like reverse writer's block, It's not like you can't think of anything. It's like you could think of way too many things. That's the hard part of writing, is just straight fiction for me, is just having too many directions to go. Yeah. So yeah, that's the tricky part, is you have to find a way somehow to something to follow. I don't know. I just flail around. Hope for the best.
I wish for myself your level of flailing. I think that would be a good problem to have. But did you write these straight through, or did you take breaks to write other things between?
Yeah, I did. I was writing other things, and that also made it kind of hard because Enchantment Lake, the first book I wrote, I tell people it took me so long to write, and I wrote it such a long time ago, that it could qualify as historical fiction.
Your history, anyway.
Yeah, I know. I did have to go through and really update things at a point, because I had worked on it on and off very casually. It was kind of like so I have a cabin, obviously, on a lake, and sometimes we put a jigsaw puzzle out, and then you just leave it there. And every time you go to the cabin, you work on it. And that's the way I felt about this book. Like, I would just work on it when I was at the cabin. And so mostly in the summer, and kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, because mysteries are like a jigsaw puzzle, just, fitting little pieces together and so on. So then that was really, I was probably working on that at the same time I was working on Heart of a Samurai, I think. Or, right along in there somehow. So a long time ago. But then it didn't get published right away because I wasn't really finished and whatnot. So then the other books started coming, but then I was also writing other historical fiction. It's like a little bit of a juggling act, for sure. Getting everything done at the same time. Or, not at the same time, but you have one book you're writing, composing, and another book that you're doing, revisions on, and maybe a third book that you're copy editing. So that's the way it was a year before last, or that last year before these books came out. I don't have that situation all the time.
Have you scratched your mystery itch, or are you thinking is it more like a now that you've started, you can't stop type of situation? You've got to write more mysteries.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a good question. I don't feel like I'm that good at it. I shouldn't say that, because obviously I want people to read these stories.
Sure, the silver box available October 6th, everybody.
I know that I know people love them. Just to say that I get a lot of positive feedback from these stories. So I know they're not terrible.
Well, in all fairness, I remind the esteemed audience, you thought The Heart of a Samurai was going to be not so great as well.
I thought that was terrible too. So, okay, you get a sense. But no, I do think that mystery writers are probably have puzzle minds. Like they're real good at those jigsaw puzzles or crossword puzzles or any kind of puzzles to put together. And I'm not really a puzzle person. So, and also I'm not organized about plotting. And I think good mysteries are mystery writers who, do series and have a mystery coming out every year. They must just really have a system, because it just takes me a very long time in my flailing way to write one. Maybe I'll come up with a system and then I'll just go for it.
5 mysteries a year published.
Yeah. I'll never be that fast. No.
Do you, when you're thinking of what your next project's going to be, do you know 5 books from now what you're going to be working on, or do you just decide closer to the day once the previous book's finished? How soon do you know what you're doing next?
No. Well, I always am working on many things at the same time. No, I shouldn't say always. I guess when I'm in the real heart of a novel, everything else falls away and I don't go to any of my other classes. But when I'm starting something new and I don't really know if it's going anywhere, I dabble in other things. So I might have several different kinds of stories going. I have a couple of picture book ideas, and working on this novel and maybe that novel, or maybe this little chapter book. And I'll just kind of poke around in all of those things until something really grabs. And then I'll just focus on that thing until I get it to a point where I want to send it to somebody, I guess. And then I send it off and see if anybody wants it. Well, I send it to my agent, and he does that.
Who's going to say no at this point?
Oh, no, I get rejected. A lot, plenty. Yeah.
No, feed my myth that there's a point you can reach in your career where nobody says no to you anymore.
Sorry. No, they say no. It seems to be quite easy for people to say no. I definitely get rejected a lot. And you just have to, let it roll off, I guess.
Do you?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I've been really fortunate in that I haven't been in a real, I haven't had a long dry period where nobody's taking anything ever. And so it's, I have hope. I'm always hopeful the next thing will be a hit. And, because I work on a lot of things, I sometimes have multiple things out. So if I get one thing rejected, it doesn't mean that everything is, there's still other things out there floating around.
So you're never sitting around pining for just your one book. You're hard at work on something else.
I'm always working on something else. Yeah. And that I think that's good, because having everything invested in one thing is that's setting yourself up for heartbreak, I think. Or joy. I mean, it can go either way.
Sure. All your eggs in one basket works if you watch that basket.
Don't drop it.
Well, I'm watching our time, and it's just slipped right away from us. It always does. Have I talked your face off, or do you have time for about maybe 3-4 more questions?
Sure. Let's do it.
One esteemed audience knows I have to ask is, have you ever seen a flying saucer and or a ghost?
Seen? I have not ever seen a ghost, but I have had experiences.
Go on.
Well, I every year I go, not this year, but for many years previous, I've gone on a writer's retreat on a little island in a lake up in far northern Minnesota, right on the border of Canada. And we've all been warned that there are ghosts there. So I spent, there's a little cabin where I stay all alone sometimes, if I'm the lucky one gets to have that cabin.
That's just inviting ghosts.
Oh, yeah. And some non-corporal being climbed into bed with me one night. I mean, it was so real that it was so real that I turned expecting it to be a friend, one of my friends. And I thought I knew who it was. And I turned and said her name, and there was nobody there.
What's that like after that moment?
I went right to sleep.
Out of bed, right back.
I was fine. But the guy who owns the island and is the caretaker there, he said, oh, all you have to do is just say, I'm only here for a few days, and then you can have your place back. So if you could just leave me alone for the next however many days, that would be good. Just say that out loud. So I did, and never had another experience like that.
Oh, not me. I'm inviting them on. I'm setting up cameras, paranormal activity style. Let's do this. So when you have an experience like that, does that give you faith then that there is something after this to look forward to? Hopefully not just hanging out in the cabin, but...
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that endlessly. Well, I think it is our job as writers to keep an open mind about everything. So that's what I try to do. I would never say absolutely not.
And it was a no on the flying saucers?
Oh, I guess, yeah. The only flying saucers I've seen are the ones we fly down hills on snowy days.
Well, those are the fun kind, so fair enough. So turning our minds back to earthly matters, I had seen that one of your biggest pieces of advice for writers is to read like a writer. What does that mean?
Well, I was, when I talk to school kids, I say, if they ask me this question, I say, first, you should always read for enjoyment the first time through. Just read and have fun. But then if you want to be a writer, go back and read very carefully and try to analyze what the writer did to cause the effects that he or she caused and, created in these scenes. So how did this author manage to make you cry or laugh or keep madly turning the pages because you just couldn't stop reading? You're so filled with suspense. And just look at how did that happen? How did they arrange those words on the page to make you have those responses and those feelings? And I still do it. If I'm working on something where I, really want to tug at the heartstrings or something, I'll go read a passage in a book that I know did that for me and really study it. How do they pull that off?
Does that ever feel like my mother was a dental hygienist, and the result of that is every time she talked to people, she would just look at their teeth and see what the style was. So when you do that on a book that you've loved, does that make that experience a little bit more detached and diminish your love, or does it increase your love for the artistry on display?
It definitely increases my admiration. I don't do that when I'm reading a book for pleasure. I just read it for the story, like most people do. And I'm not like analyzing as I go. I mostly will read a book and then remember, oh, there was that one scene where I just was crying and crying. So how did that happen? And I'll go back and try and find it and then read it. And so sometimes it's just so amazing. It's like you can't figure it out, Like I've gone back and looked at things, and it's like that's all there is there. That's all, and yet it's had this amazing impact in some way. Genius. That's genius. I don't know.
I think that's the perfect note to end on, and I've gone over our time and taken advantage. So I appreciate you being such a wonderful guest and staying around to satisfy my curiosities with a fantastic ghost story. It's so much more. Where can esteemed audience find you online?
My website, which is margiepreus.com. I'm on Twitter, same name on Instagram, same name on Facebook. And I'd love it if they would come and we can meet again on the socials.
And as always, esteemed audience, more information about the show, head to middlegradeninja.com. Find out who's coming up on the show in the coming weeks. Find out, get the back catalog, everybody that's been on the show. Find out more information about me. Download your free copy of Manicure Bones and the Giant Robot Bees. It will change your life. And as always, God willing and I'm alive, I'll see you next week.